The first hazy breaths of morning always tasted sweet in Old Town Kumbo. Mommy Alima rose with the cackling of cock, her dark hands rough against the smooth wood of the threshold. She paused, pressing her forehead to the jamb, whispering a blessing for her children and the day. Her son, Kofi, barely 17, but with the build and discipline of a grown man, was already at the well, fetching water with armfuls as strong as hope itself. Alima thought of how his brow had begun to knot in new ways lately, a silent inward conflict she hadn't managed to crack open with all her late-night teas and careful questions. The family's morning was choreographed. Dede, her youngest, flitting barefoot between dust and sunlight, following goats. Nana Tamba, her mother-in-law, was out back, tending yams with broad, calloused fingers and muttering at ants. Alima cherished these rituals, but beneath each mundane gesture flowed the river of absence. Her husband's shoes still at the door, his laughter gone 4 years now. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from? Alima ran the slender comb through Dede's hair on the front steps. They watched the sun strike the red slopes and the uniformed children winding their way toward the mission school. Old Kumbo's market square was waking. Drums from the mosque echoed low and proud. It would be, she hoped, a peaceful day. She didn't see Kofi watching the road, jaw set. Nor did she spot Bella, the neighboring merchant's daughter, slipping him a folded note when she thought no one was looking. Kofi spun the handle on the old cassette player as he swept the tailor's shop. The new apprentice, Abel, watched in awe as reggae filled the courtyard, the notes like embers flaring from the static-ridden machine. "I didn't know you fix radios too," Abel said. Kofi grunted, hiding a smile. "You think I am only muscle? My head works too." He didn't mention it was his father who'd taught him to listen for the fault in a song, the bit that jarred, and fix it. In the market, Alima bargained with Matron Essie, her oldest friend and fiercest rival in trade. They haggled over yams and peppers, children darting through their legs. Being a widow, Alima was subject to joking pity, real suspicion, and endless curious eyes. She wore her suffering quietly, deflecting gossip with humor and extra salted plantains. Later, Bella arrived at the shop, looking for the tailor. But her eyes found Kofi. When her hand touched his as he patched a shirt, a current snapped between them. "You'll go far if you leave this place," she whispered. "My mother needs me here," he said, voice tight. But when he said it, he wasn't sure it was the whole truth. That evening, a black Jeep rolled into Old Town. Such cars never came this way. It parked before Matron Essie's house, and a tall man in a pinstripe suit stepped out, skin midnight dark, teeth flashing as he greeted Essie with elaborate respect. Whispers abounded before sunfall. Who is he? One of the big people from Bamenda, they say. Come to buy land, to invest, or chase someone's debt? Kofi crossed paths with the man in the lane later. The stranger stopped, regarding him with a long, searching look. "How old are you?" asked the man. 17, sir." The man nodded, an inscrutable smile flickering. Strong boy, keep your eyes open. Opportunities find the prepared. He walked on. Behind him, Kofi caught the glint of a gold watch, something expensive, at odds with the humble houses. Inside, Nana Tamba watched from behind torn curtains, her hand trembling. She fingered a faded photograph tucked in her wrapper, and old memories flickered in her cloudy gaze. A different man in a suit, a promise, a betrayal. Things never spoken of again. The next market day, Bella's father announced they would move to the city for better schooling. Bella's eyes flared, a spark of rebellion. Kofi felt the wordless wound, but he wrapped it in silence. At the same time, Matron Essie's fortunes brightened. She brought new fabrics, shone with new gold. She started inviting the town's elders for meetings, often attended by the stranger. Rumors grew thick as plantain stew. Essie was selling parts of her land to a company for a deal arranged by the stranger. Nana Tamba muttered that there were dangers in easy deals. Alima stayed out of it, but by week's end, she saw Essie's cart rolling up the hill with appliances she'd never dreamed of owning, and she wondered. That evening, Dede returned home shaken. Someone had tried to snatch her as she gathered firewood. Alima flew into a panic. Neighbors scoured the paths, and the little girl's sleeve, torn in the scuffle, became an omen. Kofi promised his mother, "Nothing like that will happen to our family while I have strength." Yet that night, as rain hammered the roof, Kofi slipped from his mat and walked out, toward town, toward the stranger. The road to the stranger's rented compound was soaked. Wet sand clung to Kofi's feet as he crossed under the humming power lines. He was nervous, but desperate. Dedi's shaken face haunted him. Inside the stranger, Mr. Nsubuga, as he now called himself, sat in a circle of light, quietly examining papers. "You again," said the man, not looking up. "Why have you come?" Kofi's voice shook. "My family isn't safe. There are things happening here that never happened before. My sister, someone tried to—" Nsubuga cut him off. "You think I command the thugs of this town? No, sir. I think you have power. Maybe you can help." This amused Nsubuga. "And what do you offer, boy?" Kofi hesitated. "I can work." Nsubuga smiled a dark smile. "You have no idea what work means, child. Still, come tomorrow at dawn. Sweep, fetch, observe. Maybe you'll learn something about how the world is built." Kofi nodded. He understood bargains, even the ones made with hungry men. Nana Tamba saw Kofi drag himself home at first light, eyes red. She beckoned. "He is like your father," she said quietly, "always running to trouble in grown men's shadows." Kofi bent his head, not arguing. Tamba crushed his hand in hers. "I never told you, your father, he borrowed to save us after the drought. Not from banks, from men like that one. We paid. He paid more than any gold." There was something in her voice, old secrets flickering. But she shut her mouth tight and spat into the coals. Later that day, Abel the apprentice arrived in tears. The tailor shop faced eviction. The landlord wanted double the rent. "We'll lose everything if we don't pay." Abel whimpered. "I have nowhere to go." Kofi looked at the boy. "Come back at night. We'll find another way. There's talent here no one respects." Abel stared, surprised. What do you mean? You'll see. That evening, as dusk painted the sky in burning stripes, Kofi sat by his battered radio parts. Abel peeked at his hands, a mixture of deft and daring. Watch, said Kofi. He had taken apart village radios for years, scavenging wire from junkyards. He repurposed pieces, transistors from old cars, batteries from dead phones. His fingers moved with surety as he coaxed song from silence. Within an hour, he had sparked a jury-rigged broadcast, one that carried music alongside his own low, firm message. To the people of Kumbo, your voices matter. If you lose your shop to greedy men, let your story be told. Share your skills. The world may be listening. Within days, more apprentices arrived. Girls, street boys, even the children who ran from school at noon. The market buzzed about this radio boy. For the first time, the landlord hesitated. A tailor, too, gained new orders from far-flung towns. Local respect, slow like honey, began to coat Kofi's name. Alima watched, pride warring with fear. Her boy had found his voice. What would it cost him? On the Saturday of the harvest dance, a battered parcel appeared on Alima's doorstep. No return address. Dedi tore the string. Inside was a cryptic note. Stop stirring, or you will regret. And a handful of plastic beads. A message. Tamba's face creased in terror. These are beads from our old land. They mean death if used this way. From the big house that was burned. Someone remembers us. Kofi took the note to Mr. Nsubuga that night. The man's face grew grave. You are either braver or stupider than I thought. There are powers in this town far older than my money. Nsubuga slid the note into his pocket. I will look into this. Stay sharp. He did not explain more, but Kofi saw, for an instant, a flash of respect, or perhaps fear, in the man's expression. Go home, Nsubuga commanded. Outside, Kofi noticed a familiar set of footprints in the mud. He didn't sleep that night, mind whirring with questions. Bella and her family prepared to leave. She pressed a letter into Kofi's hand, her hope, her fear, her promise to return. But her absence left a hollow ache. The market felt emptier. With Bella gone, Kofi devoted himself to radio, to Abel, to learning from Nsubuga. The tailored suits, the meetings with elders, the secret lists, they confused him. He watched, ears open, as Nsubuga argued with Matron Essie about land, about gold, about something called ancestral claims. Kofi caught words he did not understand, but remembered. Meanwhile, Tamba fretted over Deda's nightmares. Alima found herself haunted by how violence ran, like a river, through their family's story. History was never really history here. It was debt, memory, promise, all knotted together. When the rain stopped, Nsubuga called for Kofi. Are you ready to know why I came here? He asked. Kofi said, quietly, yes. Nsubuga led Kofi through twisting alleys, away from curious eyes. The town faded into bush and ruined fence lines. They stopped at a half-collapsed colonial villa, trees bursting through its walls. Once, all this belonged to your ancestor, Nsubuga said. Long ago, after a promise was broken. Kofi stared, frowning. My ancestors? What promise? Nsubuga considered him. I grew up in this town too, before my family fled. There were two families at the center, yours and mine. Your great-grandfather gave my mother shelter during the old conflict, hiding her while men hunted us because of our trade with strangers. Later, a land deal meant to save both families went bad. My uncle lost everything. But your line paid too, they say, in blood and fire. Kofi searched his memory for family stories, coming up short. The connection, invisible for years, shivered into view. Nsubuga continued. I came now to return something your people lost. But Essie wants the land for herself. She's a cousin, a third line. She's not telling the elders the full truth. The package you received? That was her warning. She remembers what happened and means to finish old business. Kofi's mind wheeled. The threats, the tension, the odd respect Nsubuga showed. It all made sense. He'd always believed he was just a poor tailor's boy. Now, invisible strands tied him to the town's secrets. My family owes yours a debt. It's time it was paid, Nsubuga said quietly. Within a week, Nsubuga acted. He arranged a public meeting in the square, inviting all and sundry. He revealed with careful documents and stories the truth of the old land dispute. He presented contracts, witness statements, and, most potent, a faded signed photograph, Kofi's grandfather and Nsubuga's mother together, before disaster split their lives. Matron Essie's face twisted as the elders began to murmur. She tried to protest, but Nsubuga was ready. The land belongs not just to you, but to every branch of the family, Alima and her children most especially. The elders must decide. With unexpected humility, he offered to fund a town library and a workshop for the apprentices as restitution for past wrongs. For most, it was a shock, the big man from Bamenda intervening not to profit, but to heal. Apprehension shifted toward hope. The news swept through the town. Justice, for once, seemed possible. Old debts would be reckoned in the open, not paid with whispers and threats. At night, Alima sat with Nsubuga on her porch, pouring him tea as an equal. She asked, "Why come back? Why help us?" He shrugged. Some debts never let you sleep, no matter how rich you get. In the weeks that followed, Kofi's radio became more than an oddity. It turned into a stage for the invisible. Musicians, widows, children who swept streets, even Abel, who revealed his true brilliance with woodwork on air. Craftsmen sent their songs and skills through the static to towns as far as Douala. One Saturday, a city visitor, Mr. Mensa, a celebrity tailor, chanced to hear Abel interviewed by Kofi, describing how he rebuilt an entire sewing machine from scrap. The visitor arrived at the shop, skeptically inspecting Abel's work. "This boy knows more than half the men in our city factories," Mensa declared, slapping Abel's shoulder. "How old are you?" 14, Abel said, blinking through tears. Mensa offered him a scholarship to Douala's Technical Institute on the spot. The town gasped. For years, Abel had been the nobody, overlooked, orphaned, scolded for his stutter. But in the flare of one honest hour, he became a symbol of local dignity. At the next town dance, only Abel received a standing ovation. Even Nana Tamba rose, clapping until her hands hurt. Peace didn't last long. 3 weeks after the great meeting, an arson attack scorched a row of market stalls, Abel's, Kofi's, and Bella's now abandoned food stand among them. The town awoke to sirens and panic. It was clear, whoever sent the package was not finished. Alima gathered her family, desperate and resolute. They would not run, but Kofi felt hunted. In the burned wreckage, he found a twisted bead, Essie's old warning. Nana Tamba drew him aside. You must end this, Kofi. Not with anger, with truth. The town won't heal from revenge. It was as if suspicions, unspoken for generations, finally demanded daylight. And that's when Dedi, ever curious, brought him a new clue, a scrap of old family record found tucked at the bottom of Tamba's chest. It listed names, debts, marriages, dates matching everything Nsubuga had said. Will you tell everyone? Dedi whispered. Kofi nodded. Together, at the council, that night, rain hammered the roof. Lightning flickered through holes where embers had eaten. Alima, Tamba, Dede, and Kofi sat in a circle, hands joined. There is no curse, but silence, Tamba said. The silence that followed buzzed with history. Wrongs never mourned, debts never paid, kindnesses that returned as hope. Kofi realized then, justice was not only chosen by the powerful, but carved from the hard choices of the weak. As midnight clouds parted, Kofi stood and looked out over the dark slopes. Tomorrow, the truth would walk with him to the council. And for the first time, he did not feel afraid. Morning dawned slow and sharp, filled with a nervous hush. The town council met under the largest tree in the square, a gathering blended of old men in faded kente, market women, youth with wary eyes, and a crowd of children straining on tiptoe. Kofi waited at the edge with Alima, holding the faded papers and beads. Nana Tamba stood behind, her cane planted with authority. First, Essie stormed to the council. This family, she started, and her voice tangled in rage and injury. She rattled details of land, marriage, betrayal. She stoked village fears, painting Alima as sly, Nsubuga as manipulative, the young as disrespectful. Her allies clapped, but the rest shifted uncertainly. Then it was Kofi's turn. He stepped forward slowly, hands trembling, radio voice gone hushed. These are my family's records. My great-grandfather sheltered strangers in a burning time. My father died trying to repay debts not only for us, but for Essie's kin too. We suffered together. And now, we are still suffering while others get rich on those scars. He held up the threatening beads, his voice steady. No more secrets. We want justice, not revenge. A share for every branch, an end to threats, and a library, so the truth is never buried again. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Nsubuga rose, adding, It's time Kumbo healed. If we refuse, we stay cursed by our own bitterness. To everyone's shock, Abel stood up next, stuttering but resolute. I am someone. We all are. Let us build together. Please. Even the most jaded elders paused, seeing in this frail boy a spark of renewal. It took hours. Tempers flared. Memories cut as deep as machetes. But by midday, the mood shifted. The records, the beads, the confessions forced hard questions. Elders, previously silent, recalled bits of truth. Shelter shared in war. Stolen land returning as bad luck. Children punished for old quarrels. Widows forced to pay twice. In the end, the council delivered a verdict. The land was to be inherited by all three branches of the tangled family. The children of Alima, a share for Essie, and an obligation to Nsubuga as reconciler, not owner. The new workshop and library would be built first on neutral ground. Anyone threatening violence would forfeit their own share and face exile. Essie tried to object, but most of her allies turned away, tired of her venom. Alone, she lowered her eyes, defeated not by force, but by the sheer weight of her history catching up at last. As dusk fell, Alima wept, her first tears in years. Not of grief, but relief, with the council's decision. Fear no longer hid in the alleyways. Nsubuga remained as mentor, quietly supporting the artisans and children. The workshop drew not just Kumbo's youth, but girls from the next district, one of whom years later would become the head engineer of a local power plant. Word of Kumbo's peace spread. For a while, the town felt impossibly lucky. New teachers arrived for the library, and the market flourished. Bella, hearing of the upheaval from her city school, sent long letters to Kofi. She wrote of skies that never looked as blue as home, and how she envied the children studying in the new library. Her father, seeing the changes, agreed at last she could visit, an act nobody expected. On the day of her return, the whole market seemed to hum with approval. The families gathered in the new library, still smelling of sawdust and promise. Nsubuga broke kola and poured libation for the ancestors. Essie, thinner, with gray streaking her hair, was there too. When it was her turn, she stood, voice hollow. I feared losing what little I had, so I made all of you suffer. That is finished. Let me help, if I can, to make this the town it should be. Nobody clapped, but neither did they jeer. Something, if not full forgiveness, at least acceptance, passed between her and Alima in a glance. Nana Tamba laughed later. Freedom is when you can greet your enemy in the daylight and wish her good health. No curses in your mouth. Even the stubbornest old men, seeing Abel teaching carpentry to smaller boys, wiped their eyes. Months passed gently. Kofi became known as the radio maker, his tiny studio a museum of stories and invention. Abel, after a tear-filled farewell, left for Douala's great institute, but returned with tools and pride each holiday. Dede formed a girls' club for science, and not even Nana Tamba could keep up with her questions. Alima returned to laughter, often surprised at herself. Now, when she combed Dede's hair, she dreamed not of escaping the past, but shaping the future. Late one evening, Kofi sat by his mended radio, hearing the static shift and dance. He thought of all that happened, of talents buried in poverty, of kinship flowing in unexpected veins, of enemies who could become kin again. And for the first time, he let himself believe that peace, like grief, might endure. Rain returned. washing the market square and turning dust to slick red clay. Life had moved on, the drama now distant, just as the annual festival approached. Yet the wounds of betrayal and reconciliation had not fully scabbed over. Every glance, every kind gesture or hesitant embrace in Kumbo hinted at histories both heavy and healing. Nana Tamba, once stooped and secretive, now led the children's oral history circle outside the new library. She recounted tales not just of noble ancestors, but of greed and mistakes, of mercy and unlikely friendship. Even Essie's youngest, once taught to shun Alima's family, now squatted at Tamba's feet, enraptured. Kofi and Bella walked the footpaths together after her return, a comfortable silence, often yawning, warm between them. Their dreams, once stifled by proximity and poverty, began to take clearer shape. Kofi planned an apprentice program spanning villages. Bella plotted a youth newspaper. Sometimes they disagreed, their debates fierce but always respectful. In these arguments, Alima recognized the start of something lasting. One overcast morning brought a visitor almost forgotten, Mensa, the city tailor who had launched Abel's Rise. He brought gifts for the Kumbo workshop, a proper pedal machine, boxes of thread, and catalogs showing what their crafts could fetch in bigger towns. What most surprised Kofi, however, was the announcement that Mensa would fund a regional craft market to showcase talent from little places where greatness hides. Mensa spoke in the council square, his words echoing, "This place shows what happens when history is faced. May every town find its voice as Kumbo has." Through applause, Kofi shared a private nod with Abel, home for vacation and bashful in city clothes. The town remembered how only 2 years previous, Mensa would not have set foot here. That a stranger was now betting fortunes on their promise seemed a miracle, but nobody believed it was magic. It was the earned fruit of choices bitter and sweet. That night, as celebration waned, Alima sat pondering beside her doorway. She watched Dede, now teaching the smallest children their letters. Her laughter striking the night air like new music. An old unease returned. Had the peace truly rooted, or would resentment bloom again? She watched Essie, quieter now, sharing kola nuts with Nana Tamba. In their careful movements, Alima read anxiety. Could a truce last when history ran so deep? Kofi sensed his mother's worry. Sorrows do not vanish, they settle, waiting for seasons of drought. He found Abel sitting alone behind the workshop, tracing his city ID badge with a trembling finger. "Do you ever fear it'll all slip away?" Abel asked. Kofi's answer was slow. "I do. But now I know, if it does, we know how to start again. Not perfect, but together." The first real test arrived with an accident. A food seller's child, struck by an ox cart, needed urgent care. The clinic lacked supplies, the driver shamefacedly poor. Words sped across Kumbo in minutes. 2 years ago, this would have ended in threats and blame. Now, Bella rallied her newspaper team. The youth collected coins. Mothers brought food. Tamba sang to keep spirits up at night while the girl healed. Even Essie led the kitchen, simmering soup over a roaring fire. Kofi broadcast daily updates on the radio. spotlighting every helper, regardless of their family's name. Lessons bloom. The accident never became a target of vengeance. It became reason for unity, proof that the town's fragile balance had finally begun to tip toward justice and mutual regard. When the girl rose from fever, laughter and songs outshined every shadow lurking in memory. Harvest came again, and with it the festival, brighter for the peace won through pain. Visitors from other towns came to marvel at Kumbo's famous reunion, at the pride in Abel's machines, at Dedi's club's science displays, at Bella's growing paper, and Kofi's workshop for village youth. The reunion between branches of the family was quieter, but infinitely more meaningful. Essie, now thinner, but animated by something new, proposed a scholarship for orphans to the city. Alima surprised herself by embracing her, tears dampening both their dresses. That night, at the crest of the celebration, the town danced together for the first time in a generation. Nasubuga, watching from the edge, quietly slipped away, his debt paid many times over, not with money, but by helping Kumbo choose its better self again and again. Months passed, and peace in Kumbo began to feel ordinary. The new library's shelves filled with borrowed books and donated letters. Children argued gently over stories from far-off lands. The workshop buzzed with quiet ambition, each apprentice building not only crafts, but reputations for themselves and their kin. Kofi walked among them, his radio now a living archive. Village songs, debates about science and old customs, announcements of weddings and funerals, sometimes both in the same breath. Abel, now a teacher more than a pupil, showed city students how poverty bred invention, instead of only suffering. Your wife worked hard and sacrificed herself to protect and care for her little family. She's happily then the hard worker. Her crafts a more noble version of life and wisdom. She is also helping the kind a son in signing days. This is the end of a wisdom from a legendary story, and children embrace their country and choose to call it home. Lessons bloom, times 10. Our miseries also bloom. Remembered the lessons always bloom, from the body's last to the boat mark, from pages being taught to. Dede's Girls Club gained first place in a national science contest, their experiment in solar cooking attracting a letter of congratulations from Kumbo's governor. Nanatamba declared, "Let no girl in Kumbo feel small again." Even Essie contributed, her legacy no longer fear, but public praise for courage and reconciliation. On the anniversary of the council's reckoning, Alima, dressed in her finest cloth, her arms around both Dede and Kofi. The whole family walked to the large tree, now hung with children's paper lanterns and prayers. Bella, officially Kumbo's first youth editor, read a poem about the market's song, how each voice, however cracked, made the town's chorus whole. Mensa sent word from the city. Kumbo stands as proof. Build on. Essie, aged in face but lighter in her spirit, gave Kofi a carved box, a symbol of trust restored. Inside were the last beads, this time as a necklace, transformed by forgiveness. She whispered, "You are my kin, not my rival. Carry it so you remember. As the sun rose, Kofi waited for the radio static to clear, ready to make his final broadcast of the season. He thought of the faces around him. Abel in the workshop, Bella with her pen, Dee leading a caravan of hopeful learners. He realized the greatest gift was not just the piece, but the chance for each to become something more than their old stories. His voice traveled gently through the morning. In Kumbo, every life is a lesson. Here we do not forget the past, but we plant new hopes in its ashes and share the harvest with all. To the children, dream, and know your dreams will be honored. As the market woke, laughter and promise filled the air. Nana Tamba's stories, Essie's quiet smile, Mensah's message, Nsubaga's absence, all reminders that reconciliation was never just a single choice, but a practice carried onward, always unfinished, always worthwhile. Epilogue, the unwritten chapter. Years later, visitors to Kumbo find no marble monuments. Instead, they see a library alive with argument and joy. They buy crafts from teens who know their worth. They hear on the radio the voice of a humble maker, welcoming every new child, every story, into the town's never-ending circle. Alima still sits before dawn, listening to Dede and Kofi debate whether luck or work changed their lives most. Their laughter blends with the rain, and their peace, fragile, hard-won, growing, feels at last as normal as morning light. And Kumbo's unfinished story continues, echoing through the dreams of those still waiting their turn.